6-year-old growing up in my district in Plainfield, Iowa, I got my first job as a public employee with the Poweshiek County Conservation Board. And I learned how to clean toilets, and I learned how to mop floors and scrape gum off the bottom of school desks. And I also worked out in the blazing sun, building bridges on farm-to-market roads, driving an axe into spikes into creosote-treated lumber. And one day on the job, my left hand caught on fire. So I know a little bit about what public employees do. And you mentioned the TV ads that groups from Washington ran against you, and yet you yourself had a large amount of support from secret donor groups like the ones that attacked me in my campaign. Are you willing to go on the record here today and denounce the influence of outside secret money in political campaign ads?
Again, I thought the purpose of today was to talk about debt.
Well, let's talk about that. You ran campaign ads on the principle of good government, and I thought that's what we were here to talk about today. In fact, you ran a campaign ad called Real Leadership. And when the campaign ad ran, it says your focus was bringing people together to solve problems. You remember that ad?
Yep. And I would argue, if you want me to, you ask me a question, I'll say I remember it. And that's exactly what I did in my first month and a half when Democrats and Republicans came together to push economic development.
Excuse me, this is my time, Governor.
Well,
You've answered my question. I asked you
if you want to do a political stunt, go ahead.
I'm not doing a political stunt. I think if Dr. Phil were here, he'd say, how's that working for you? You also ran an ad called Yes, We Can. And you said, working together, we can put government back on the side of the people again. You also ran an ad called Make It Right, talking about government scandal benefiting politicians. You ran all those campaign ads. Well, this is your chance to make it right. Are you ready to apologize to the people of Wisconsin for hiring the 27-year-old son of one of your major campaign donors who's a lobbyist, and that individual had no college education, very little managerial experience, and had 2 drunk driving convictions and was hired for an $81,000 a year job when you obviously had better qualified applicants? Are you ready to make an apology today to the people of Wisconsin? That doesn't sound like good government to me.
The Chair will ask the gentleman to suspend. Please turn off the clock. The Chair would remind all participants, although members here at the dais have a right to speak for 5 minutes and say anything they want, and we will consider it germane, our witnesses are only asked to respond to items which they came here prepared to respond to that are consistent with the subject of the hearing. So it is for the witnesses to decide whether a question is germane. Well, in fact, members here have an almost unlimited right to say what they want to say during their 5 minutes. The gentleman may continue.
When I grew up in Plainfield, at least for the years I lived there, and Chuck Grassley was our state assemblyman back then, there were good, decent people, many of whom were farmers, who recognized, many of whom were deacons at my father's church, who recognized when times were tough, you had to make tough decisions, particularly when times were tough in the finances of the church. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're talking about that. You may not want to talk about that. You may want to talk about anything. And I'll answer your question about the 27-year-old.
I'd be interested in your answer, because that's the question the people of Wisconsin want to hear today.
Well, I'm glad you're interested in the people of Wisconsin.
I am.
Because that person was 5 levels below me. When that position was, when that hiring was brought to my attention, I had my staff go back and have that person taken out of that position, and I acknowledged the fact that there were more qualified people, and I asked someone else to be put into that. So that's the answer to your question.
Well, in fact,
if you look at, again,
I'm reclaiming my time.
Well, if you don't
the Milwaukee Journal,
the truth,
Mr. Chairman, has written an article about this and noted that 2 of the highly qualified candidates for that administrative post were Oscar Herrera, a former state cabinet secretary under Republican Governor Scott McCollum, who had a doctoral degree and 8 years of experience overseeing the cleanup of petroleum-contaminated sites. The second, Bernice Madison, was a professional engineer who served since 2003 in the post to which Mr. DeShane was appointed and had 25 years of experience in state government. And since the whole focus of this hearing is on good government practices and how that affects the debt that states have, I think it's time that we got some straight answers from the people who are radically reforming state governments, and that's why this is so important. And I would ask the Chairman to hold a hearing, and I've got a letter for the Chairman, since we have broad jurisdiction, according to the committee's website, to look into the other factors that are impacting State budgets, including cronyism in State government. And I've got a letter to the Chairman to that effect. I ask unanimous consent for the article from the Dubuque Telegraph-Herald titled "Walker Insults Young Worker with Cronyism," published on April 11th of 2011, to be made a part of the record. And I yield back.
Without objection. The gentleman yields back.